Hello and welcome back to RamsTalkPodcast. And we're here today to preview Derby's clash with Stoke City. It's away from home where Derby haven't been great this season, but after back-to-back draws away from Pride Park, Derby will be looking to get themselves a first win on the road this season. So joining me today to tell us all about Stoke City is a man who knows quite a lot about Stoke City, or at least I'd hope so, because he works for BBC Radio Stoke. So I'm joined by Lucas Yeomans. How are you, Lucas?
I'm good, Jake. I know enough about Stoke that I can wing this podcast. That's for sure. No, I think we can have a good chat about a club that I know has got quite a good rival with Derby. So I'm looking forward to the game first and foremost.
Yeah, me too. Although I got tickets and I didn't realise it was at 12:30, and now I've realised I've got to get up early. I'm like, oh god.
It is a pain. At least it's only just down the A50, so it's not too bad. But it's a the 12:30s I've not quite got used to just yet, and we've got to go on the radio at like 11 a.m. too. So it's a long build up to an early game, but at least it doesn't. You can have enough of a Saturday to still enjoy it if your football club decides to ruin it that day.
Absolutely. So, Lucas, we've got to kick it off by talking about Stoke as a club. I was saying to you before we started recording, I did a little bit of reading up on how Stoke have been the last few years. I didn't realise since relegation from the Premier League quite how bad it had been. Talk us through the last few years, at Stoke City. What sort of happened and what's caused sort of the rut you've ended up in?
Everything's happened. Everything's happened because they've tried everything. It's that saying of throw enough things at the wall and see what sticks. Nothing's stuck yet. Nothing's worked. They've tried every type of manager, probably bar your Sam Allardyce or I guess nowadays be David Moyes or someone like that. That's the only thing they haven't tried. So obviously everyone remembers the Gary Rowett leaving yourselves to come to Stoke. And I remember Stoke being tipped by everybody. They were going to be top of the league. They'd signed players like Benik Afobe, Sam Clucas, James McLean, and the stereotype of on paper, it looked really good. And then, again, the other stereotype that paper doesn't win you football matches was proven true. And they just looked off it kind of. I think the first game they played back in the Championship, which is a really tough game to play, was Bielsa at Leeds United. And I think they just made Stoke look terrible. And then Stoke never, ever looked good from there on in under Rowett. Nathan Jones comes in. Mad Nath, as he's kind of known around here. And he promises all these things. He shows kind of flashes of excitement towards the end of that first season, but ultimately ends in tears. And then he gets off to a terrible start. The mood's really low. Michael O'Neill then comes in, who's a manager with kind of international reputation, good reputation. Nathan Jones, someone that was kind of an up-and-coming, exciting manager. Michael O'Neill, probably the best of that situation, but he had really bad luck when it came to things like injuries. There was a season where Stoke, by sort of the first quarter, coming up to the first third of the season, were around the playoffs, and things were looking great for the first time ever. Struck by financial fair play as well, and then all of a sudden, Harry Souttar gets a really nasty injury, and they fall off a cliff again. So Michael O'Neill had a tough spell as well, being sort of stripped by financial rules and regulations. Couldn't really sign anybody. That was a really tricky thing for Stoke City to deal with. He then eventually can't really get anything else out of a team that's been a really thin resource team for the majority of his tenure there. He leaves. Alex Neil comes in. Alex Neil then sort of suffers through that season. Then they get a clear to spend some money in the transfer window. That was the start of last season. They spent about, oh, goodness me, I don't know how much it was, but it was on about 18, 19 players. I would say 3 or 4 of them are actually any good.
Oh, God.
Yeah, so that worked. And then there was another rebuild in the summer just gone when Steven Schumacher had come in a few months prior to the end of the season. Started to show signs of excitement. Ricky Martin, the technical director, left and Jonathan Walters came in. And when you've got a new sporting director, you've got new vision. And Jonathan Walters and Steven Schumacher, we thought were working in cohesion. But then about 5 games in, it's very clear that Jonathan Walters doesn't see Steven Schumacher as the answer. So Steven Schumacher's sacked. And now we've got Narcis Palak, who no one had heard of prior to his appointment. But to be fair, has come with a lot of pedigree in the football circuit, in the football industry. Anyone you speak to that works in the game has got a lot of praise for Narcis Palak. And he hasn't got off to the greatest of starts as Stoke City head coach. But I think people, again, are thinking, well, one of these has got to work at some point. And it's kind of another case of waiting and seeing. But Stoke fans are so bored of waiting and seeing. As you've just said there, so many different options, so many different attempts at a rebuild. Sometimes they've got money, then they spend it, and they try to do a brighter model. That didn't work. They tried to go for more homegrown talent this time. It may work, it may not work. Different managers. At some point, it'll either be really, really good or it'll get a lot worse. But I actually think this season, again, and we'll get onto it in a second, it'll be another 16th place finish. I just think it's looking that way, which is what it's only ever been for Stoke. Bit of a flirt with relegation normally, ending in a lower mid-table spot. So it's more of the same, it looks like.
Well, that's it. And I mean, looking at where you are on the table, you're 19th at the minute. You've won 3, drawn 3, lost 6. I mean, when you talk about 16th, that is prime 16th form, isn't it? It's wildly inconsistent. You can't get a bit of a run going, and yeah, you never seem to have that success against top teams when you go into those games. And I think Derby are a little bit the same at the minute, where you go into games against better teams and it kind of feels like you've lost before a ball's been kicked, rather than giving them a good game. So I guess, how's it felt so far this season? I know you've kind of mentioned it a little bit already, but is there really no hope among Stoke fans at the moment?
The mood's low, I would say. Among Stoke fans, the mood is low. And then someone who works on the radio, and I know quite a few people at the football club, I can see what the club are doing. And off the pitch, they're doing some amazing things. Jonathan Walters is a Stoke City hero. He's a Stoke City legend. He wants the club to do well. And he's not making decisions because he wants to sort of see them stagnate. He wants to see them improve. And he's made these big calls that the fans haven't been pleased about, because there was almost like a bit of I can't be bothered to do this again. And now they're having to do this again. Another rebuild, a new style of play, a new head coach to sort of connect with. I think fans are just finding it really, really monotonous that it's the same thing over and over again. So I hope that this will not be the case, because it's obviously it's an exciting game. It's a game with two sides that have a little bit of a rivalry, but I can't see the mood at the stadium being that great, because results haven't given them a reason to be. Performances haven't really wowed anyone. They won 6-1 against Portsmouth, but that kind of feels very much in the distant past now, and no one really remembers that as fondly as they perhaps should, because results since haven't been that great. It doesn't feel dangerous. I think only a select few would think that Stoke City are in real trouble this year. I think the real fear is that it's just going to be another season where players adapt to a new head coach's style. The head coach needs new players to fit what he wants to do. The culture of the club's changing again. And this happens every year, and then they realise it's not working, so they rip it up and they start again. And I think fans are just a little tired of that, I think. And they've been asked to get on board with something again, which I think some are struggling to do.
Yeah, I mean, it's less than ideal, isn't it? And to be honest, it was reminding me, the way you were talking about that, a little bit of Derby under Mel Morris, especially towards the end, where we got a new manager in, completely different style of play. We had Steve McLaren, fast attacking football. Paul Clement was next, and he played really slow possession-based football. After that was Gary Rowett, all about that. A bit of hoofball to Cameron Jerome. And we had so many changes in style, with so many managers spending so much money in so little time, that it ended up killing us. And I have to admit, in some ways, I see Stoke going in the same direction. I can tell by what you're saying about the fans, and you see it, don't you? You can tell by the attendances in the ground that fans aren't enjoying it. Fans don't really want to come and watch it, because it's kind of hard to get on board with. Like you say, how can you buy into 5 plans over 5 seasons for 5 different managers? It's borderline impossible. And I just want to sort of bring up your sort of recent form. I mean, I've got it up in front of me now. You've 5 games in all competitions without a win, which means you'll obviously beat us about 7-0. But you've drew 3 games. Obviously lost to Sheffield United and then lost to Southampton. And obviously the Southampton's EFL Cup, so it's a little bit of a different one. But your last game against a promoted team, you mentioned it already, that 6-1 home win against Portsmouth. I mean, obviously as a promoted team, you sort of look at that and go, "Ooh, that's not good." Sort of talk us through that one and why that was such an outlier compared to other performances.
I was surprised. I just, to be honest, Stoke City were were good. They took the chances that were given to them. But sorry, Portsmouth gave them so many chances. I'd only really watched Derby last season in League One, but I'd heard lots of good things about Portsmouth. Obviously, they were the side that always looked the most likely to go up of yourselves and Bolton and Oxford and Peterborough and the likes. It always looked like Portsmouth the ones in control, and yet they've been the side so far, having played Oxford as well, and we'll play Derby on Saturday, that have looked the most lost. And I'm not sure if that's just because the players just simply aren't good enough for the Championship, but Portsmouth just gave up so many chances. It was only really until the last half an hour the game went really stale. Stoke were already 6-1 up, and Portsmouth kind of just really shut up shop, passed it around their own half, and didn't really give Stoke a look in with the ball because they knew the game was gone from them. Every time that Portsmouth tried to play, they ended up conceding another chance to Stoke City, which Stoke City did really clinically and were really good that night. Tom Cannon, who hadn't scored at all for Stoke, and he'd missed loads of good chances and has done since, was just on fire that night, and he scored 4 goals. There was a really good link up between himself and Sam Gallagher that we hadn't seen just yet. Sam Gallagher, who's now injured, so you won't be seeing that at the weekend. It was a bit of a freak result in the end, and I think it was more because of Portsmouth. I mean, the league table says it, doesn't it? At the moment, with all love to them and respect to them, they're the worst side in the league, and Stoke made them look that way, but Portsmouth let them make them look that way. No one's given Stoke as many opportunities to score as Portsmouth did, and most sides have really countered. They've really countered Stoke City, and what Stoke City just. Yeah, I just think that Stoke really struggle with a good game plan. I just think that they really struggle, or a tweaking. So 2 games that come to mind are Hull and Bristol City. So Stoke started really lively, they looked really good, and then there's a change in setup, a change in system. A player comes on and changes the way that they approach the game, and Stoke just don't know how to deal with it, basically, and that's what kills them at home. I don't know if it's the players still adapting to what Narcissus Platt wants them to do, and then when the other side change how they've prepared for the game, I think they kind of get a little bit lost and bewildered. I think that's why people are hoping that with a bit of patience, these players will pick up what they're being asked to do. But it's pretty easy at the moment to hold Stoke off, unless you're Portsmouth.
Yeah, unless you're Portsmouth. I mean, yeah, that is an interesting point. I think it's strange. I didn't realise all 4 of Tom Cannon's goals had come in that game. I sort of looked at it and thought, oh, he's not had a bad start. But yeah, if they're all in one game, maybe that does raise a couple more questions.
So many other chances as well, by the way. It's just he was really clinical that night, and then he scored a cracking goal against Southampton in the EFL Cup. So I'm hoping that it gives him a bit of momentum. But we said that after Portsmouth, so I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about style of play there. You know how Derby are going to play. We like to sort of sit in a little bit. We don't really control the ball. We've completed the second least amount of passes in the whole league this season. I think only Millwall have made fewer completed passes per game than us. How do Stoke usually deal with teams that set up like that?
They don't. There's been a real difficulty for Stoke at home when away sides come and they sit back and they try and get on the counter, or they make it really difficult. Stoke, one thing that I thought they were changing in a corner was the end of last season under Stephen Schumacher, where and it was since John Waters came in, to be fair, so all credit to him, is that I think there'd been a message of be more aggressive at home. Have a little bit more intensity, especially at home, because you're the home side. Don't be scared of these sides that sit back and kind of try and bully you. You bully them. And they started to do that a little bit. And I think they lost that a little bit with the new players that come in, and then with the change of manager. And I think they're trying to work out, hang on, how does our head coach want us to play? And then how do we then counter whatever we're facing? They have a really positive start a lot of the time. They had a really positive start against, they have a positive start at home. They normally finish quite well away. But with this being a home game, they normally start quite well and then really sort of peter off. They can be intense with their pressing, but then as soon as the opposition work them out, kind of a little bit one note. So in recent memory, in recent history, sides that have sat back, Stoke have just really struggled to beat. Sheffield Wednesday, Millwall were 2 examples last season that sort of play that kind of style. And the Stoke just had no way of countering it. It ended up becoming a really boring game, actually. I've no doubt that Narcis Polak, who, by the way, he goes to bed at 3 and he wakes up at 6, and he spends the rest of his time analysing all the games. So he will expect exactly this from Derby County. It's more whether the players are then able to counter any problems they face in the game. It's the game plan is never the issue. It's the changing in the game that is the issue.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting. I mean, you talk about games being a little bit boring. Derby are really good at that, having games that are very, very boring. So can't wait to go to Stoke this weekend because it's going to be an absolute thriller, I'm sure.
Might be for a midday nap, I think, Jake, that game.
Definitely don't want to be doing that to you if you're live on the radio.
No. It's tempted me before, I can't lie.
Oh, well, yeah, I'm sure Dom will say exactly the same in our commentary box as well. But let's talk about a couple of individuals in the Stoke team. I mean, everyone knows about Enda Stevens, obviously really successful at Sheffield United. A player that, sort of sticks out to me is Milian Manhoef. I think he's a player that came over from the Netherlands, and we signed a player from the Netherlands, Kenzo Halfmine. And when we were doing all our sort of pieces on that, they were really complimentary of Manhoef and how he's sort of adapted to the Championship. And then obviously you've got your goalkeeper, the man who keeps our goalkeeper out of the national team of Sweden, it's Victor Johansson as well. There were really strong rumours that he'd signed for Derby early in the transfer window. Obviously Paul Warne connections and all of that sort of stuff. So we know his quality. But are those 3 players ones that have stuck out to you, Lucas, or is there anyone else you can think of that's sort of like the key man?
Enda Stevens has looked really good since he's come back in. He's obviously, like you say, he's had a really successful time at his former club, Sheffield United. Injury hit last season, a bit injury hit this season. He didn't start the season through injury, and then he came back in actually coincidentally the same time that Narcis Polak was appointed head coach, and he's relied on him quite a lot. But he's 34 years old, Enda Stevens. He can't play every game. He was rested. He wasn't even in the squad against Southampton, which makes me think he'll probably play on Saturday. He's even though he used to play left wing back at Sheffield United, obviously 34, he's a bit more defensive minded now than I would say the other left back who could play, Eric Boocock, who's very much a left back that flies forward, that likes to run into the middle of the park and is a real threat actually in terms of whipping the ball into the box. But I think Enda Stevens will play. He's a bit more sure defensively. It depends what system Narcis Polak goes for. He's gone 4-4-2, sort of variation of that. Our managers like to switch things up these days. 4-4-2, but also kind of a 4-2-3-1, that sort of thing. But then in the most recent 2 games, he's gone with a back 3. So I wonder if he'll counter Derby County in the same way. And I think if it's a back 3, Eric Boocock will start, who again is a bit of a threat, but he's not as good defensively. And Enda Stevens is probably the opposite. He's a bit more short defensively, but more like to play left back than left wing back. He has had a really good start. Milian Manhoef, you're right. He's naturally Stoke's best player, and he is the person that would win Stoke City a game on his own, and has done that. Plymouth Argyle kind of springs to mind. He's brought Stoke City back into games like against Norwich City, where they would have lost it if it wasn't for a moment of individual brilliance from him. He is the best player, I think, since
Tom
Ince. Yeah. Someone who I'm sure everyone on this podcast that listens to this podcast will have fond memories of. I think he's Stoke's best player technically since they've come down. He is a bit one note, a little bit, but that one note is incredible. Like, I don't think his assist numbers will ever be massive, but just watch out when he cuts in and shoots from his left foot, because he's exciting. He'll be a threat. He's a bit of a game winner. On the opposite flank, I would have said Bae-Jun Ho is, again, a really special technical player. But actually, Lewis Koumas is a player on loan from Liverpool. He's 18 years old. He's a really special player. Those 2 are the game changers, I think. Even if one comes off the bench, they're going to be a problem for you. So look out for those two names, especially if you're a Derby County fan, because they're the players that will just be a handful for your defenders. That's what they are, the handfuls. And I think their goal contribution numbers kind of back that up. Yeah, I think they're the two to definitely watch out for. Eric Boocock or Andy Stevens, and then it'll probably be the Junior Shamadu who had a really good game against Southampton, or Ben Wilmot. It depends what system he goes for in terms of the fullbacks, because he does put a real special emphasis on those players. So they're the ones I would watch out for. Kind of the flanks, really. The left back, the right back, the right wing, the left wing. And it all depends on what formation he ends up doing. Tom Cannon could score 4 against you, or he could miss 4 really, really easy chances. It's kind of hard to tell at the moment.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. That's a good evaluation of pretty much the entire team there. So thank you for that. It's definitely helped. And yeah, I mean, I know you obviously didn't mention him, Johansson in goal as well.
He's the player of the season, right? He has kept Stoke in games, and he has stopped scorelines from being a lot worse. I think probably one of the best, and he's definitely top 3 in the league goalkeepers. I think he is that good, and people will think I'm over egging the pudding there, but if you do have a bit of goal mouth action on Saturday, you'll see how good he is.
With our shooting, we won't test him once, mate, so I wouldn't worry too much about that.
For this game, Jake, I'm so excited.
It's be the best 0-0 draw I've ever gotten up early on a Saturday for. So, I mean, we have to address it at some point, Lucas. People may not know you've got quite a good relationship with Dom Dietrich from Radio Derby. Have you got any fighting talk for him ahead of the game this weekend?
Well, do you know what? He was watching the game against Southampton. He messaged me say he's watching it, and he was trying. I won't out him, but he was really trying to sort of stick the rod in and proper mix things up a little bit here. I actually really like Derby County. I've done some work on BBC Radio Derby as well, so I've got a real soft spot for them. I really like the football club. I really do, but I really hope, because of Dom trying to stick his oar in and really cause some trouble, I now really hope that Stoke thrash them, and I hope Dom has a terrible show. That's more important to me. I hope that the technicals don't work. I hope he can't get on air. I hope he has a real panic, and I'll sit there smirking next to him. That's what I hope happens, because of how smug I know he'll be. We're going for food afterwards, by the way. We booked a table with some food in Stoke, and I think it was a really bad idea because we're both pretty sore losers. So maybe a 0-0 is probably the best case scenario, actually, for the long-term future of our friendship.
I think you might be right. Yeah, I can't wait to tell him about all of this later on.
He'll say, cool. It's fine.
Yeah, he probably will. And he doesn't have to filter himself like you have here as well.
No, myself.
No, I appreciate it. So, one final question for you, Lucas. What is your prediction for this game? I know, obviously, you want it to be 30-0 Stoke, so Dom's upset. But what is your genuine prediction for the game this weekend?
0-0 does feel right, actually. See, so your away record is not good at all, is it? So I don't even want to give you the pleasure of kind of getting a goal away from home. I think it will be low scoring. I think I'm going to go positive because Stoke really need a win. They've not won since that 6-1 against Portsmouth, and I think the home fans need something to cheer about. They need a positive performance that kind of stretches to 90 minutes, not just the start of the game. But I think an optimistic, can you believe I'm saying optimistic, 1-0? That's what I think. I think that would go down really well with Stoke City fans, and a positive performance to go along with it, I think is probably. I'm gonna say that. I don't even feel good about that, but I'm gonna go with it.
Sounds good. I'm thinking. I was thinking 2-1 Derby. That's my go-to. Is 2-1 Derby because it's an easy one, isn't it? But I can't see them scoring 2 goals, so I think it'll be 1-1. I think you guys will definitely score. You'll definitely score. We'll make a mistake. We keep doing this away from home. We've got a mistake in us, and it usually always costs us. But I think I'd hope that, especially towards the end of the game, like you said, we've got enough about us to to pull one back, and we'll get our third consecutive 1-1 draw away from home, fourth consecutive 1-1 draw at home and away. So, yeah, the most exciting team in the Championship.
You really are, aren't you? Thanks for visiting. Can't wait for Saturday.
Me too. Right. Thank you so much for joining us, Lucas. If you're listening and did enjoy, please do leave a like. Please do subscribe. If you're on YouTube, please subscribe. Let us know in the comments what your thoughts are ahead of the game as well. We're currently running 3,900 or so kilometres across the course of the season to raise money for Derby Food for Thought Alliance, who bring food for those who need it most. So if you could donate, we'd be very, very grateful as well. So thank you so much for listening, and thank you, Lucas, for joining us.